All right, guys, hang tight. We're going to get started in just a minute. If you would like, start in the chat room. Tell us where you're coming from so we can see where you are from. And there's Mr. Brad Weimert. Hello, hello, hello. Let's get you unmuted.
How are you?
I am good. How are you, my friend?
Good. A little under the weather, but good otherwise.
Oh, are you okay?
I don't know. I've been sick this is day 19 now, so.
Oh no. Well, I have tequila at my house that has your name on the bottle, so I need to get that to you.
I have been told by a nurse recently that tequila will kill the coronavirus, so I think maybe I should give it a shot.
I need to give you your tequila. That's it. I'm so sorry, honey. I'm sorry you're feeling bad.
It's all good. It's not too bad.
Claudio, glad to see you here from Rio, from Brazil. Fantastic. If anybody else is joining us here, let us know in the chat room where you're coming from. We're excited to have you. And thank you, Brad, for joining us. Even though you're not feeling well, we appreciate you joining us.
For sure.
Let's see, we'll get Mr. Frasier on here in just a second. And basically we'll do we'll let you talk a little bit, Brad, and then we'll do live Q&A. So anyone can ask you questions in the chat room, and that'll be great. We're excited. Awesome, awesome. Oh, Paul, you're from, we have two people from Brazil. We got one from Rio in Brazil and one from Campinas, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Awesome. Fantastic.
I need to get down there at some point.
I know. What's the weather like, JT, in Brazil? I'm going to unmute you. Can you unmute yourself? Let's see.
It's about 65.
Nice. So it's nice weather. Are you guys holed up in your house?
Yes, thank God I have a home office. And Vegas looks like you've never seen it before, a ghost town like back in the 20s, the cowboy days. Amazing.
Wow. So you're there in Vegas, correct?
Yeah, I live in Vegas. I moved my company here 5 years ago from California.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. Let's see who else. Paulo, I'm going to unmute you. You're from Brazil. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys, I'm from Brazil, and I work with live events and producing and facilitating live events here in Brazil. And this connection was sent me by a friend, and I I see that it's very interesting, so that's why I'm here.
Well, we're
And
so
I have a
glad
friend
that you
here.
joined us.
Claudio's a friend. Yes, we know each other.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I actually recognized you. It's so glad to see you on here. I think you're going to learn a lot. So that's fantastic. Let's see. All right. Let's see who else we got. Gina, good to have you here. Tony, Steve, Stacy Kellums. Glad to see you here, my friend.
Stacy.
All right. So let's see. We'll give it maybe 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. So Brad, tell us, since you've been on day 19, obviously you're not feeling well, what have you been doing?
For us, we are one of the few, well, I guess not, there are probably a lot, but we are considered business essential. So my office is still up and running. Everybody's still in the office.
Fantastic.
And they love it. Everybody is routinely thrilled that they have gotten away from their family, mostly, and their kids for some hours during the day. Personally, since I've been under the weather, I don't know what it is. There have been no tests available, so I have not left my place since. But a lot of work. And when you don't travel at all, somehow you find extra time in the day. So getting a lot done.
No, well, I am so sorry. Looks like Roland just joined us. So Roland, we have Brad, and Brad is on day 19 of not feeling well and has been very sick. So the fact that he's here with us today is incredible, and we're so glad that he's here.
Awesome. Well, I'm so sorry that you're not feeling well, Brad, but thank you for making the time to come, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm not terrible. It's like a light cold is kind of what it feels like with some weird cough.
That sounds dangerous.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I'm going to need you to move your little box on the screen 6 feet over from everybody else, please.
I feel like my dog is the most at risk right now. He's been licking my face a lot.
I love it. Well, hey, everybody. Hey, Eric and Stacy, JT, Michael, Steve, Tony, Brittany, everybody. It's Serena, Gina. It's so cool to have you guys on. And this is really something that I think is important that maybe isn't getting enough attention in light of everything else that's going on. But Brad, I wanted to have you on to talk about what's going on with merchant accounts right now as a result of this, and what, if any, strategies have you seen or are you using with your clients, or what things do you see that businesses can do? And everybody that's on here, the idea of these Business Lunch Lives is that we're having interactive questions. So we really want to make as many fantastic resources like Brad available to you guys to get you whatever you need to do well during the this kind of coronavirus bubble. So Brad, you want to tell everybody a little bit about you, what you do, and then we'll hop into it?
Sure. Yeah, so I started Easy Pay Direct a little over a decade ago. Easy Pay Direct at its core is a gateway and merchant account provider. So we help people accept payments largely online, as well as in the live event space. We are very heavy in the information space. So probably 20% of our book of business are people that are selling information of some sort. And then there are a variety of other verticals that we spend a lot of time in. But that's the background. We do very large event companies that are 100 million plus a year, and then we do people that are in the $1 million range. Events obviously have been hit hard, as have several other industries, purely from a business perspective. But the merchant account side of things is directly involved as well. And what I'd like to do is kind of dive into some fundamental things that I think are important to know, and give everybody an idea of what the ecosystem looks like in terms of accepting payments right now, what the flags are, and then a couple things that you can do about them.
The other thing too, Brad, if we could, I think there are probably a fair number of people that are sitting on reserves that they would love to have released and have access to their own money now. So maybe you could talk a little bit about any strategies that are, good for that, and if that's a possibility too.
Yeah. So I think that, I can definitely do that. the starting point here and where, so first and foremost, merchant account providers contractually, legally, whether this is Stripe or PayPal or traditional merchant account providers, have the right to hold your money or close your account with no notice at any point in time. And that's really important to know. It is their right to do that legally. So they have a lot of control here. It happens often. So if you're here right now, you probably are familiar with it being a problem or it being a liability in general. If you're not aware of that, you can ask a friend or Google frozen merchant account or frozen funds, and you will see millions upon millions of hits. The reason that happens fundamentally is consumers, when they buy anything through Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, have 6 months to dispute that charge. When they dispute the charge, it's called a chargeback. So they can ask for a refund. If you don't give it to them, they'll dispute the charge potentially. If they dispute the charge, you as the business owner are responsible to deal with that. And if you lose, you have to pay it back. First and foremost, when a dispute happens, the money gets pulled out of your account right away. So disputes are not good for that reason. But the concern here is that if you don't pay it back, and if your company isn't around to pay it back, the credit card processing company has to pay it. That's where the liability is. So credit card processors are looking at things thinking, is this company going to be solvent 6 months from now to pay this back? So that risk exists all the time for credit card processing companies. So this is a perpetual issue, but it is heightened in this pandemic right now because businesses have already closed and are continuing to close over the course of the next month, 2 months, et cetera. As that happens, credit card processing companies are going to take losses. So many of them right now are looking at that and saying, hey, how can we proactively curb our losses? The problem is many of them are doing it in ways that, and I don't, honestly, it's a rock and a hard place for them, but they are doing it in ways that are detrimental to businesses that are already hurting. And that's kind of the genesis of this call, is understanding what that is and then what you can do about it. I don't even know what the number is anymore, but probably 15 days ago, we saw the first provider make an announcement it was an email, an internal email that said, I think I've got the quote. It said, many businesses will be affected, will not be able to provide services that were paid for, and many will not have funds to cover the refunds due to their customers. Effectively, immediately, we're holding 10%, blah, 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 a 10% reserve on their sales. And they listed 15 industries, 15 categories of industries that they were going to do this for. So this is a very large credit card processing company in the US. Overnight, they decided to hold 10% of their funds for 15 different categories. And I'll rattle off a few of them so you get an idea of who they immediately impacted. So bus lines, travel agencies, furniture companies, caterers, real estate agents and managers, rentals, lodging, hotels, beauty or health spas, theatrical productions, commercial or professional sports, membership clubs, including sports, recreation, athletic, amusement, charitable and social services organizations. And here's the big one, membership organizations not elsewhere classified. And that's a big one because it's a catch-all that means anything that we put in this bucket at some point, we're going to impose a 10% reserve immediately. Now, what's interesting about that and what's scary about that is that these are all the back end of credit card processing is we funnel all these businesses into what we call MCC codes, merchant category codes. And it's a horribly imperfect system. And you can think about it this way, like, how many times have you been on a website and the form forces you into a drop down and you're like, I'm not really in the drop down. And so you just pick something. Well, the underwriters do that also, or the algorithms in the case of Stripe or PayPal. So you're funneled into a bucket somewhere that may or may not be accurate. So when these closures happen categorically, you're impacted by that. Now, this is a huge processor. And as soon as that happened, we started to see a couple others do the same type of thing. One of them closed all coaching companies, and it was just overnight closure. The other two that we saw right after that gave notice instead of immediate action, but it's all the same. It's other banks following suit. So again, it doesn't have to be a pandemic that's causing it, but in this case, we have this heightened awareness around it. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And I think it's helpful to get a little frame about what that is. There are kind of two paths that I think about in terms of how to mitigate risk here. The first is protecting yourself from that kind of thing. And our advice always, as long as you're producing, as long as your sales are over, call it $250,000 a year, our recommendation is that you are very, very careful about working with the right providers. So Stripe and PayPal don't do any underwriting. They're great to vet concept and they're great for some very low risk business models, but they approve you immediately. And what that means is that they don't know who you are, what you do, how you do it, what you sell, how you deliver it, if you deliver it. So when they look at risk, the only thing they can do to control risk is to hold money or close the account. And that's not good or bad. That's just how that business model works. Unfortunately, if you're a big company and they deem you to be risky and they hold your money, then it is bad for you, right? But it's their only mechanism to control risk. The other way to control risk is what traditional merchant account providers do, and more accurately, a specific group that focuses on e-commerce, live events, et cetera. And that is underwriting on the front end. So the right providers for us are people that will get to know you, the business model, and the business history, and make sure they're comfortable with it before they approve the account. And that radically diminishes the likelihood of having an issue later. Significant. Now, the huge caveat there in this moment is if one of those providers was really good at live events, well, that's a problem right now, right? You can't have all your eggs focused in one basket with this one provider that's big on live events because they have to mitigate risk another way now. Mm-hmm. So the second thing that we suggest everybody does is has more than one merchant account. And that's, I think that anything in business, if you have a single point of failure, you have not contingency planned. And my general rule of thumb when I'm looking at investments or business operations is, plan for the worst and the best, and probably neither are going to happen. Mm-hmm. But this is one of those scenarios where ideally you would have set up the right providers and multiple providers months ago. The next best time is right now. And then we get into like, how do you just mitigate in general? And one of those in general is being proactive about refunds. So if you have the ability, there is an inverse relationship between refunds and chargebacks. If you give people refunds, they will not dispute charges as often. Not a universal truth, but as often. So that's a good rule of thumb in general. Now, I think I want to hear actually some of the group's ideas on this, because I'll give you some specific things relative to right now and what you can do right now. But I think that there are also good strategies amongst the community and, probably lots of people on the call in terms of how to just manage cash flow right now and ideas for generating additional cash flow right now. What I can do on the front end is help with how to prevent further cash flow issues by providers holding money. The number one thing is communication with your clients. And what I don't mean is an email with a subject line that says COVID-19, because that's going to spam for me right now. But what you do want to do is specifically let clients know if what you're going to be delivering is not what they originally purchased. So if they bought into a membership site of some sort and it included a live event, you're not doing live events right now. You need to address that. And I think that there's a range of ways you can do that. There are lots of live event companies right now that are just pushing for virtual. I think that can work. I also think that it would be prudent right now to recognize the difference in that for the end consumer and whether or not you're going to be delivering the value that you said you were. And this is not an ethical consideration. It could be, but I'm saying this purely from the perspective of mitigating refunds and disputes, right? So if I you know, if somebody paid you a lot of money for an event, let's say that they paid you $5,000 for an event, and now you want the event to be virtual because it's the only way you can deliver it. It might make sense to refund half of that money and say, look, the event's virtual. We don't have any overhead anymore. So we're going to refund a portion of it. I hope that this makes sense. I hope it works for you. That's one way to manage it. Or if you are, you know, in the case of something like an annual membership where you have annual meetings, if you're not going to be able to do a meeting, the same thing applies. How can you change the recurring pattern so that you're making everybody happy? Because that's ultimately going to decrease the likelihood of dispute. That's a big thing. And along those lines, altering any kind of recurring billing is a consideration. So one of the things that processors are doing, the nice things that some of them are doing, is a select few have decided that they're going to waive chargeback fees right now. And it's along the same line, right? Whether you're a processing company or you're a business owner, everybody's hurting. So what can you do to help them in that moment? Those things are ultimately going to benefit you relative to certainly credibility, long-term relationship, but also right now keep you from losing your merchant account, which is a big deal. Yeah, and so beyond that, I think that we get into kind of strategies for how do you increase sales amidst this right now, but those are kind of the fundamentals of managing the merchant account side of things. Questions on that, Roland, or anybody else?
Yeah, I have a few. One is, and this is a challenge if you close a business in the past. I think it's a challenge also when sales get dramatically lower, is that percentages of refunds and chargebacks increase above unacceptable levels to merchant providers when something like this happens, because sales are down for some people. Like in Digital Marketer, our sales are down about 20%. But the volume of refunds and chargebacks, which were very, very low as a percentage, when sales decline, go up, and that can trigger some red flags for merchant providers. And also when in this situation, people are freaking out a little bit, and so they're artificially refunding or charging back. How do you communicate with your merchant provider to have them not freak out? I mean, I'm guessing they get this a little bit, but at the same time, they've got automatic triggers in their algorithms and stuff too.
So you're asking for humans to actually apply logic? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I'm just saying, what strategies, like how do you, like, does it make sense to call and explain to them that you're seeing this, but it's because sales are down because of the COVID thing, and or is it better just to kind of, you know, curl up in a ball and, you know, suck your thumb and rock a little bit and hope that they don't notice? Or what do you think is the best strategy?
I think bourbon is somewhere in between those strategies, which can be good.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, this is where the right provider is so important, because yeah, everybody should understand that this is happening, but you know what? Providers should understand that anyway. If you have a decrease in sales and happen to have an increase in refunds, product launches do that all the time, right? You launch products, you have no refunds that month probably, or disputes, and you have big sales dollars. The next month you have no sales dollars and you have tons of disputes. So your ratios and numbers are all skewed, and yeah, it triggers algorithms. And that's one of the reasons that it's so bad to do product launches with things like PayPal or Stripe, because it triggers the algorithm. It's an issue. Yeah. So, you know, it's not a clear-cut answer there. I would say that if you feel like you have a good relationship with your provider right now, like you know somebody there, let them know. Have an open conversation with them. I would also say that it probably makes sense if you don't have more than one account. That might be a precursor to having that conversation, trying to get another option open, so that if they freak out, because it's possible you tell them and they're like, hey, I don't know, we don't like this. Let's close your account. That happens. Yeah,
that's the concern, right? So you recommend rocking and some thumb sucking, I think.
I recommend proactive mitigation first.
Okay. Followed by bourbon, followed by rocking and thumb sucking.
Yeah, I'm not a big thumb sucker, but the bourbon should fit in there somewhere.
Okay. Well, don't rule it out. Tequila. I'm just saying. Okay, Stacy, I'm going to unmute you. It's nice to see you here. We hadn't talked in a long time. Stacy Kellums has a question for you, which I'll let him ask directly. Brad.
Hey, Roland. Hey, Brad. How's it going?
Hey man,
Good,
can you
man.
put your
How you
video
doing?
on? Any chance you can videofy for us, Stacy, or are you indisposed?
No, I can. I'm just hanging out here in bed. Let's see. How do I do this in bed? I mean, sitting on the bed, not actually in bed.
You can also just ask the question, but it's always nice to see.
I don't know how do I do that? You can
Down
own
at the
an
bottom
internet
left, there's a little thing that says start video.
You can own an internet marketing company and not know how to use the technology, right? Can you
That
guys?
makes sense.
I have no idea if you guys can see me or not. Anyway, so Brad, so who are some of your favorite on the chargeback side? Do you like Chargeback Guardian, Chargeback 911, Mitigator? And also, which processors are waiving the chargeback fees right now?
That's like, you mentioned a couple providers. Those are chargeback mitigation platforms. If you have the ability to use Mitigator, I think Mitigator is a great platform, but it only ties into a handful of shopping carts. So it's only helpful really for a few verticals and a few people. Chargebacks 911, if you want to use a service to fight chargebacks or manage chargebacks, Chargebacks 911 is my preference there. Odd fact for the info marketers out there, Grant Cardone's brother owns Chargebacks 911. But good company. I have some fundamental problems with the chargeback management companies in general, in that they don't help you reduce chargebacks, they help you fight them. And reducing chargebacks is a much, much, much bigger deal, because once you get the chargebacks, that's what creates the flag for the merchant account providers and causes them to close accounts. So I'd say see if you can address that on the front end. And the ways you address chargebacks in the front end are giving refunds, putting your phone number in the descriptor of your merchant account. So what shows up on your consumer's credit card statement is your business name and phone number. That encourages a call instead of a dispute from them, and making the refund process easy. And then there's a marketing message thing. Don't oversell, but that's not the problem right now that we're having. In terms of the providers that are actively giving waiving chargeback fees, that's a little bit like asking questions about SBA loans right now and the PPP program. It's a moving target. It's changing every day. And people that decide to do it right now might change it later. And I know that we have a couple companies internally. And what I mean by that is EasyPay Direct works with a couple companies that have announced that they're doing it through April. I'd have to look who they are. I get the email notifications, then push them to my team.
Got it. And one more thing, can you kind of go over the differences between Mitigator, a company like Mitigator, and Chargeback 911? How are they different? What services?
Yeah. So Mitigator is MIDIGATOR, which MID is a merchant ID number. That's where it comes from. But Mitigator is a software, and they are predominantly used to automate refunds before they turn into chargebacks. And as opposed to, Chargebacks 911, and I'll dig into that a little bit further, but Chargebacks 911 is a manual service where you get a chargeback, it goes over to them, and their team a human will respond to the chargeback and do what they can to handle it manually. Mitigator, as a software, is tied into two platforms. One is called Ethica and one is called Verify. And this is it. If you have chargeback concerns at all, you have to be using these platforms, Ethica and Verify. Now Ethica is owned by MasterCard, and MasterCard has mandated, earlier this week, that every bank in the world gives their information to Ethica. And what it does, and they're the same thing, and Verify is owned by Visa now, but Ethica and Verify are the same thing. What they do is, when the card holder files a dispute, if you as a business are enrolled with Ethica, when a cardholder files a dispute, that dispute gets sent to you, basically gets sent to Ethica and then to you right away. So you see the dispute happen in almost real time. If you give them a refund instead of a dispute, if you give them a refund, in the first 24 hours, it never turns into a dispute. So what that means is it doesn't show up as a chargeback in your numbers. And so that prevents your credit card processing company from thinking that you have a lot of chargebacks.
Right.
So we as a credit card processing company love it when people use Ethica and Verify, which is the primary thing that Mitigator is offering.
One more follow-up question, and then I'll shut up and let other people ask questions. Brad.
Hey, Stacy, hang on one second. Let me just clarify something here. So Brad, is there a point to use advantage of using Mitigator if they're using Ethica and Verify? Is it better just to go straight?
Yeah, you can only use Ethica or Verify through a service provider. So you can't work with them directly. You would go to your merchant account provider and ask for it. Mitigator does some other stuff in that it is basically they're tied into 4 major CRMs. Maybe it's more now, but they're tied into CRMs and they focus on certain industries. So Mitigator isn't a great product across the board. It's very case by case. Ethica and Verify you can get from your credit card processor or for EasyPay Direct, but that's the only way you can get it. And yeah, you should be using it whether you're using Mitigator or not.
Okay, and EasyPay Direct is you, so you have those things on those are the services you offer folks that go through.
You got it. Yep.
Cool. All right, Stacy, what's your other question?
I was just going to ask Brad. Brad, 4 or 5 years ago when you and I were having a similar conversation, you told me about Ethica and Verify, and I signed up for them. But back then, 4 or 5 years ago, they were only catching 15 to 20%. Are they better now? 15 to 20% of the chargebacks that occurred. Are more banks using them now? And are they catching more? Have they gotten better over the years? The question.
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes. And so what Ethica did, both of them, I'll just say Ethica, but what Ethica did is they literally went out to all the banks that they could that issue credit cards and said, hey, when somebody files a dispute, will you send it to us? Will you send us the data? They went one bank at a time. And so both Ethica and Verify started with the major banks, right? But then they went one bank at a time to get their data across the whole world. And they went country by country. Well, they built this dramatically, both of them, when they sold to MasterCard and Visa. That's why this was such a big deal. And we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen. We kind of thought that Visa or MasterCard might just close the programs because they manage the chargeback programs and make a ton of money off them. So there was a question there. But with MasterCard mandating that banks now integrate, you'll see a huge uplift in that. It'll catch a ton of the chargebacks as opposed to 15, 20%.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott said, Scott Maddin, and Scott, you may unmute or we can unmute you. But he said that they added VMPI and that was also helpful in addition to Chargeback 911. Will you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe Scott can say how it's helped his business?
Yeah, I think VMPI is the updated, essentially 3D Secure. So basically, it's cross-referencing a database for what they think are valid cards or valid consumers. And the primary function for that, as was one of the functions for Ethica and Verify, is to prevent fraudulent transactions. Not transactions of people that could dispute anyway, but purely fraudulent transactions.
Okay.
Scott, so that's a good.
Can you speak as to what specifically that did for you that you like?
Yeah. So when a customer calls now and says, "Hey, I don't recognize this charge," we're using Connective, and so it's not every credit card merchant does not connect to a VMPI, but more and more do. But they will now call, and they will see the merchant will say, "Well, you purchased Roland's master class on being a global badass on this particular date," and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I recognize that product," where they might not actually recognize the merchant because it could be.
I see. Okay.
A lot of times these merchant identifiers on these on their statements don't really reflect what they're buying.
That's actually a really good point, because when we're going through and analyzing charges, that happens all the time. It's like, what the heck is this, right? It's like DMC3, out of New Jersey. I have no idea what that is or who that is, and it might give you a class, like it might say online goods. Not helpful, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is something that's fairly new. I'm not. I don't believe it's not even a year old, Brad, you may know more, but
Yeah, this is like version 3 of MasterCard had this product first, which was called 3D Secure, but it was really cumbersome and inconvenient. And they basically it was made for super high risk industries like online gaming and adult and things that nobody would underwrite unless they use 3D Secure. This is the next iteration of that, which it allows developers to integrate it into their platform, like Connective. Again, it's one of these things that you can only use if it's integrated. But the descriptor, what you just brought up, is one of the things I said earlier, which is you can work with your merchant account provider to make sure that your descriptor has your phone number and your name in it. That's the best case scenario. Yeah. And also, you need to make sure that when I say your name, if your legal name and your DBA are different, you need your DBA in there, because I don't know what
the customer recognizes, right?
You got it.
Got it. So ideally in that, you would, and what is it called again? It's the merchant ID, or what are you asking them about? The descriptor.
The descriptor.
Okay. So in the descriptor, and what if you have multiple products? How do you do that?
That's a thing. So you could have, depending on what your volume is like and what the purchase patterns are like, you could have separate merchant accounts for each product. We have supplement companies, for example, that each product kind of stands on its own, and their brand is, like the overarching brand people don't recognize, but they recognize the independent products. And so we want different merchant accounts with different descriptors for each of them.
Can you within, so let's say that we come to you and you're providing the merchant account for us. Can you allow us to do like sub accounts so that we can do it that way? We can basically, it's almost like is it GTM? It's like the little things, like the identifiers that you put to track something. It's kind of the same thing. If it goes through this, like a tag, I guess, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. There are different ways to do that. It depends on the company and how it's structured, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Matt, you want to say what you just said? Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah. Brad, I got a question. I've seen some companies recently doing like on my credit card description where I go to a website and it takes me to like a page where it says like a why did I get charged page versus like a phone or an email. What's your are you seeing that common? What's your take on that? I'm just curious what you think of using that versus, having your phone or your email be the most prevalent piece of your descriptor.
So you're buying a bunch of porn online. It's free online most of the time.
Is that what it is? Must be it.
That's what I've heard.
Well, it depends. It depends on the type, Brad. I mean, when you
there are specific categories.
Yeah.
Test it.
Yeah.
I think that there's always this balance of, can we automate this away, or do we need a human to intervene? People don't look at things that you send them. It's just, it's crazy. It's like, we have people that send text messages before recurring billing starts, as well as emails. Some of them have people calling, and they still get disputes because and the dispute reason is, I didn't know I was going to get charged. It's like, give it a shot. Our experience thus far has been getting to a human is what people want, right? I don't want to, if I want my money back, I just want my money back, and I want to be done with this transaction. So you need somebody to calm the situation down and talk to them.
Makes
if
sense.
you can. Yeah, but test it.
Okay, cool. So what you mentioned, business strategies. What you talk to all kinds of business folks, and you're lots and lots of clients in War Room and other places. What are you seeing people doing right now, both in, directly related to merchants and credit cards and things like that, as well as just business generally that seems to be working?
Yeah. One of them is bundling products or pre-selling products and services. So I have and I've seen a bunch of people do this effectively right now. I have a sort of like personal trainer, biohacker person that I use, and that's all hands-on. And I text him last week and I said, how are things going, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm seeing about 30% of the people that I was, which is good. He's still seeing people, kind of, but 30%. And he was like, yeah, honestly, it's tough. And from seeing other people, my suggestion was pre-sell packages, sell them and offer. And by the way, offer a big package right now. And so they put together hey, buy 5 or buy 10. And I was like, you need to put a buy 20 in there. Somebody's going to do it. You just put it out there. If you don't put the $300 shot of tequila on the shelf, nobody's going to buy it. You might as well put it out there.
Right.
So they sent the text to 10 people, and they sold 6 packages on that. Now, the other side of that for them is they can accelerate usage of those services when they can see people again. It's very easy for them to say, hey, you know what? You haven't seen us in a while. Let's get you back in alignment. Let's do 3 sessions this week instead of 2. Because there is a tail end of the cash flow also, right? But that's one. The other cool one that I saw a client do last week was amping up their affiliate payouts. So they get a decent amount of revenue from affiliates, and they took their affiliate commission from, call it 25% to 45%.
Okay.
They wanted to incentivize their stream of, agents that are referring them affiliates to push their product instead of something else.
Okay. That's really cool.
I thought that was really, really clever.
Very cool. Any other questions for Brad about any of this stuff? Derek says, so with our apps, we've been reaching out to merchant services, had a call yesterday with a company looking for a contact. Derek, can we unmute Derek? And Derek, you can chat with Brad about that. There he is.
Hey, Mr. Brad. Thank you, sir. Mr. Ron.
Yeah.
So I have an app called Niobe. It's a referral app that allows me to refer Mr. Ronald to my favorite pizza place. When he goes in there and buys pizza, that business pays a referral fee of whatever they choose to me for sending him there. I get a piece of it. Ronald gets a piece of it for trying it, and the app keeps a piece for facilitating it. So I reached out to this guy told me, he said, you need to get with a merchant service, big company. So in a normal world, who signs up a business? In a normal world, like the Groupon type style, I would call Joe's Pizza and I would say, hey, Joe, this is Derek Tippett's got this great app. Let me tell you about it. They don't know me from Adam. They would hang up on me or get pissed off or whatever. But Matt Swan, he walks in the door. He knows them. He says, Joe, why aren't you on this app Niobe? It's amazing. And he goes, I've never heard of it. He tells him about it. Joe's Pizza signs up. Matt is the one who signs them up. So Matt gets 7% of whatever that referral fee is. So the guy that I talked to said I needed to go to a big merchant company, somebody with thousands and thousands of business, get with somebody at upper management and have them pass it out to all their agents because they already have the relationship with the business. I'm looking for a contact besides Mr. Brad that has those relations.
Yeah, I can, we can take this offline. I can, you shoot me an email, we'll set something up, but I'll put you in touch with our director of agent development who runs our agent program. You've got a couple different things there. You've got distribution, and then you also have maybe how you're actually moving the money. And that's another consideration altogether. I don't know if you have that structured at this point, but
we do. We use ProPay because they were the only one who would, because what we created, they didn't understand it. It's never been done before. Allowing somebody to make a referral for a pizza company, and then then Brad gets paid for eating there. I mean, the whole concept, which is cool. I'm so thankful that we're doing something, but nobody would take a chance on it. And
this isn't going to be super relevant to everybody, but there are concrete rules around how you can move money, and that's what's called split funding. You're splitting the dollars amongst different parties, and there's one specific category that allows people to do it, and it's called a payment facilitator model. So we have a payment facilitator. We can do that stuff, but there are only a few of us. There are like, I don't know, 6 payment facilitators out there. And we, when I say we can do it, we actually work with one that does it for us. So we sort of white label them.
One of the cool things was that the reason we went with ProPay, and we're not going to change directions right this second, but one of the reasons we went with them is they actually were one of the few companies that allowed, we could handle both sides of it. So the business, Joe's Pizza, could pay ProPay, and then ProPay generated cards for Matt. So they handled both sides of it. It wasn't 2 different entities that we had to do. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, ProPay is one of the older PayFacs. They've been around a while.
And I know we're going to end up changing to another company, but for a company like Niobe who didn't even exist, we got turned down. It took us 10 months to get approved with them. So it was a challenge. So,
well, wish we'd caught you sooner. Could have helped with that, but I can help you with distribution probably, and we'll check out the product, or my director of agent development will. Maybe we can get you in touch with some other agent channels.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Brad, what would you thank you so much for coming in today and sharing all this with us. What would you say people should do if they have more questions, if they want to talk about things that, because obviously there's a lot of confidential information that people might not want to share in an open Q&A. We've got lots of comments on the Facebook Live as well. What's the best way for people to contact you? And are there any specific things that you think you'd like to help people with right away that are either needing to add that extra merchant account so don't have all their eggs in one basket, or working with reserves, or anything else that they need help with?
Yeah. Reserves are tough right now. If you have a reserve in place and you're trying to get your money back right now, that's an uphill battle. So that's unfortunate. Depending on the scenario, it doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means, it's a tough time to do it. But I'd say easypaydirect.com. Our team is super knowledgeable.
E-Z, like just the letters E and then the letter Z?
It's EASY. We
That's important, right? Because we want people to get there.
We own both domains because this happens. Yeah, easy, EASY, PAYDIRECT, easypaydirect.com.
Good. And Deanna posted a link. Also, real quick, Tony asked, how quick can a company set up Easy Pay Direct and start accepting payments?
Yeah, it depends on the company. We usually say 2 days to 2 weeks. Here's the deal, is that because we do underwriting, the quicker you can get us the documents. So we want credit card processing statements and your ID and a couple other things. The faster you get that to us, the quicker it gets set up. So get it through really quickly, and it's usually 2 to 5 days.
Okay,
but I think my blanket advice is make sure that you work with, if you don't know your provider or you're concerned that they're not a good fit for you, set up another account right away. And even if you're small, you still want to be with somebody that makes sense. And if you're doing more than, $250,000 a year, you need more than one account anyway.
Okay. And then Derek gave you his email. He accidentally posted it for everybody, so I'm going to send it to you privately just so you have it both places. And then
Awesome.
Tanik, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, or Tanik, asked one question real quick. He said, is there any counterparty risk with merchant accounts right now? I'm not exactly sure what that means, but maybe we can unmute Tanik or Tanik, and you can also tell me how to pronounce your name. Okay, you're unmuted.
Yeah, so my name's not really Tanik, this is my alt. My real name's Steve. Hey, how's it going?
Steve.
What's up, Steve?
Yeah,
I can't mispronounce it.
Yeah, it's Tanik, but I use it to sign up for things. All right, so this is more related to a financial question with respect to if this sort of spills over into more of a credit crisis to like we saw in 2008. I don't think it will, but there is always the risk. And my concern is, if you have a large processor go down simply because of failure to meet debts, or because there's too many structural risks involved in that.
Mm-hmm. What happens? Yeah. So
first off, do you think there is a risk right now or in, let's just say, the next year? And if it does, what happens?
100%, absolutely, there's a risk. There's a risk all the time, and there's more of a risk now than there ever has been in the recent past. Usually, the risk is worse now than it was in '08 by a lot, because of the nature of what's happening, and how it's happening and how quickly it happened. So everything that I opened the call with, meaning, businesses have already closed their doors, the next round's going to happen, processors are going to start taking losses. The good thing about the payment ecosystem is it's very distributed, and that also is a bad thing in some respects. But the way that things are structured is every credit card processing company you work with, including Stripe, is backed by a major bank. Now, if the major banks went under, I'm not as concerned about that right now. I'm more concerned about the processors. So if they go under what's called a member bank or an acquiring bank, same thing, it all rolls up to them. And then they are directly tied to Visa and MasterCard. So they are a member of the Visa MasterCard Association. And so every credit card processor that you're talking to has one of these banks behind them.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got your website, which is Easy Pay Direct, spelled out, we prefer. And anything else, like as far as email or anything else you want to share, Brad, for people to get a hold of you?
You can find me on social. That's probably the easiest way to do it. But realistically, I think that the fastest thing, if you have questions, fastest thing to do is talk to my team. In many cases, they know more than me, and they're much more responsive.
Okay. And then if somebody wants to come over to your house and kind of snuggle up with you and ask questions 6 feet away, then what's your street address right now? I'm just kidding.
They'll have to bring bourbon is the answer.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I love it. What's your favorite bourbon?
It's funny. I just bought a bottle of, because bars are closing, some of the local bars are doing auctions on their liquor.
And
so
wine.
I just bought a bottle and wine. I know you like wine.
I like both.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. But like, if you buy an expensive bottle of bourbon, that could last you several drinking sessions. If you buy an expensive bottle of wine, it's one night.
I mean, it depends on how motivated you are. If you're committed, I think you can get through the bourbon as well.
That's true.
So what did you find? What are you loving?
Weller Full Proof, which I have not had yet.
That's a barrel strength, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
I'm a fan of all the Wellers. There's so many good there.
It's great. And then, but my go-to is Angel's Envy Rye. And I don't normally like rye, but it's a really, really unique rum barrel aged rye.
I like those different barrels. It's kind of fun, right?
Totally.
Nice.
Big impact on the flavor.
Did you get a screaming deal on it because they were selling it off?
I got a little bit of a deal, but I got the peace of mind knowing that it helped to pay for the people that have been out of work. So it helps support the service staff that hasn't been able to work for the last 3 weeks here.
I love it. I mean, that might be a good idea, because I know Jay Abraham told me his son works at a fancy restaurant in San Francisco, and he said that a lot of restaurants and collectors were selling off their wine at just insane prices, like even super old, rare wine and spirits that they were selling at acquisition cost, which if you think about what a restaurant pays, like for a Pappy or a Weller or, anything like that, it can be a pretty great deal. So I think it might not be a bad idea for those of us who are alcohol inclined to reach out. I think I might call some of the restaurants around here and just ask, hey, are you, because I know Ruth's Chris is doing 50% off any bottle of anything. And, they've got markups, but there's still values, particularly if you're looking for, lower end or higher end things. The things in the middle tend to be maybe not that great a deal, even at 50% off, but 50% off something that's hard to get or really, really hard to find that's on one of their lists, be it spirit or wine, could be pretty good plan. So that's my homework for tonight. I'm going to reach out and find me some booze.
Well, and even if you're buying it at the price you would normally buy it at, you're supporting somebody in a totally different way than you would, you're going to buy it anyway, maybe. I mean, I know you are. So Yeah, totally. So it's a really cool way to stock up right now if you have the capacity.
I love it. Gina doesn't like that we're talking about this. She said, "Oh Lord, another session on wine and whiskey." Love it. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And Gina, thank you. Appreciate that. Brad, Easy Pay Direct, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it, and appreciate all the help that you're giving to all of the folks that that work with us, that I know that are working with you. It's really nice, the level of service that you guys offer over there, and really, really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to help you guys however I can.
Awesome. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you. Deanna, what we got coming up next?
In the next 10 minutes, I just put a link in. If anybody wants to join us, we also have one on taking events virtual. So we posted the link, so you're welcome to join us on that one as well. And
Awesome.
then Brad, I have your tequila, so I'll get that over to you soon as well. Take care, my friend.
All right, guys, we'll see you. Thanks.
Bye.